Okay, thank you everyone for making it back to this room for the second segment of the program. I know you all had alcohol, so thank you very much for being able to continue with this. And I trust that all of you did your homework. Yes? The second survey that we asked you to fill in? Yes, okay, we'll find out later in a special segment. So now, while all of you were outside having your break and eating really nice food, our discussants were in here working very hard, deliberating on their task. Right? So I saw a lot of furrowed brows, people deep in discussion, views flying around. And after 45 minutes, they are now ready to share the results of their deliberations. So they were broken up into 7 groups, and each small group has elected one representative to share what the group has collectively deliberated upon. Okay, so I'm now going to invite each of the representatives from the 7 groups to come on stage and just share with everyone. We'll make this speedy, so one after another. The first group, we'll invite Louis, representative of the first group, to come and share. Please give Louis an encouraging round of applause, okay?
Thank you. Hi everybody, my name is Louis. I'm going to represent Group 1. Can I just get Group 1 to quickly wave to everyone so they know who they are? I'm going to sort of represent them only because I didn't have time to prepare this, so I'm just going to babble on. So to the question of choose 2 statements that we are most contentious about, right, for us, right? We actually debated on what exactly the question means, what does being contentious mean? And each of us actually interestingly, quite different interpretation. Some of us interpreted it based on the potential impact to society, i.e. whether would people die or people get killed or harmed when you make such a statement. Some people interpreted it based on whether do people disagree with. When I say people, it could be yourself personally, or it could be society as a whole. There's very divided views on it. Some of us define it as whether people take offense to it. And again, whether is it by a particular group of individuals, is it by yourself, or is it society as a whole, etc. And also, some of us define it as whether is it bullshit, is it untrue, is it factually correct? Some of us define it whether is it legally sound or unsound. But interestingly, regardless of what kind of definition we have, right? What's happening there? Okay, regardless of what kind of definition we have, actually, interestingly, most of us actually chose statement C for cat, which is actually give me the permission to open fire. I would love to see these gays die for their cause. So I thought that was quite interesting. And I think in terms of the second statement, we couldn't really come to consensus with quite a few, and mainly it was either A, E, or F. And to the second question, right, would we allow these expressions to be expressed in artistic context? I think most of us agree, yes. And I think at least one of us said that because art provides us with a safe space, it also allows us to suspend judgment, to get the chance to talk about it, etc. And I think then at least one of us also tried to push back a little bit to talk about what if people are not able to discern what is real, what is unreal, etc. And basically someone actually make it quite poetically and saying that actually should we defend the stupid, the people who can't, who doesn't know that it is art, right? I think more or less we say that no, we shouldn't defend them. But at the same time, then someone else also tried to expand the space, right? Going beyond the artistic space to talk about just space in general. Should we allow such expression? So at least one person said, yes, we should do it. And I think the fundamental reason is because I think he had faith that society was actually self-correct themselves, i.e. to come to the right conclusion. And then I think one of us also tried to push back a little bit further to give a hypothetical scenario, right? What happens if it's actually someone who is anti-Pink Dot, right? And actually wants to say this statement right in front of the Pink Dot event and holding a gun. Would you allow the person to do it? And interestingly then, he said that actually in that case, it's not so much about the statement anymore. It's really the person trying to be an asshole and trying to kill the person. And therefore, it's actually the issue with the gun and not with the statement at all. And two last points. One is I think we also spoke a little bit about stereotyping, whether is it okay for the arts to then play on stereotypes. And I think we mentioned the specific example about the Jack Neo movie, right? And then we give a very hypothetical situation if you have the ability to make a call to the directors to influence them or to make a change. Broadly speaking, we conclude that no, we won't do that, either because we believe that market forces again will self-correct themselves, or we think that because it's just one specific film, we're not so concerned about it, we don't want to control that particular film, but if it's something that's happening, that's more systemic, that happens across the entire ecosystem, right, then maybe you want to do something about it. And finally, we ended off with a little bit of discussion on whether art is it really a common or uncommon space. We don't have a conclusion to that. We also spoke about whether if it's uncommon, should we make it more common, or if it's more common, should we make it more uncommon? We have no conclusion to that. So that's a summary of our discussion. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Representative for Group 2.
Hi, my name is Lee Keng, and I'm representing Group 2. If Group 2 will want to identify themselves, yes, no? Yes, okay. He was going to come behind me and dance, but that's a separate thing. Okay, so we basically came to a conclusion that we couldn't pick two statements. So the statement that we picked that we felt was the most contentious was statement C, because it is a very clear incitement to violence. Of violence, I'm sorry. And to suggest that there can be an equivalent in this list is kind of false lah. You can't really say that any of these other statements here are equally as violent as C, because it is actually something to, actually asking for somebody to inflict harm on somebody else. So we talked a lot about harm and the consenting yourself to harm. And so in response to question 2, I think almost unanimously, please correct me if I'm wrong, said that yes, that the artistic space and the artistic context is precisely the uncommon space where these things can be expressed. And I think that has to be tempered with the idea that we need to be aware that consent is very important. So you, by act of being there, it means that you consent to, I guess, harming yourself to be exposed to these things. And we kind of discussed whether, there's a possibility that the use of the uncommon space can be abused. For example, somebody brought up if you told everybody you were coming to a play and the play kind of gave you an instruction manual on how to create an atomic bomb, and in circumstances there could be people there, I think we all agreed to some extent that there is some level of regulation in the form of an advisory, so not an outright ban or outright say no, but I think you should be informed that if there are triggers in this play or there are certain things that are in this artwork that could harm you. That's pretty much it, right? Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Representative from Group 3, please.
Hi, this is Sam. So guess which statement we chose? C. Okay, so we didn't manage to go so deep into the sentence, but what the members felt was that the pairing of the words open fire and die, although you can understand it metaphorically, but it's undeniably a threat, and it implicates violence, and the members felt that this was very offensive. And it seems that this perpetrator seems to think of himself to be standing on higher grounds, whether noble or higher vantage point. He allowed himself the authority to judge and punish the specific group that he was targeting in his statement. And then for second statement, between D and E, we thought they were quite similar. Eventually, we settled on D because of the word Christian, as opposed to the phrase religious people used in statement E, because we thought the definition for religious people seems to be pretty undefined, as opposed to the word Christians being used. It's a very specific labeled group of people, and that statement D was projecting them in a very negative light, and further accusing them of being deceiving, of being deceitful, deceiving others into thinking that they are not. Right. So in our second deliberation, should we allow all these expressions of statements to be used in an artistic context? We said yes, because we need to contextualize all of these statements in a safe space, and one of the safe spaces is arts, but censorship, we are still working on that. Second point is these seemingly negative sentences, they need to be aired for audiences to agree or disagree with, and then you make your case for an argument. Not so much to advocate for a particular cause, but just make a case for argument and discussion. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative from Group 4.
I'm Jocelyn from Group 4. Would you like to wave Group 4? Okay. So there was some disagreement in our group, but we worked through it. I think we were from different religious backgrounds and had different beliefs. But if we had to choose one, it would be surprise, surprise, also C, because of the violent connotations. Yeah. And we felt that all the rest were either accusations or fallacies. We didn't have a second option. And for the second question, would you allow the expression of these statements in an artistic context? It was a resounding yes. Also, I don't have to repeat what the rest of them said, but it's for similar reasons that theatre is a safe space and better in the theatre than on the street, as Chloe said. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Very short and succinct. Representative from Group 5.
Hi, I'm Yvonne. So our group is Group 5. We actually also decided on C. I think that's because of the violence aspect of it. Our second choice would have been F. No particular reason, but I think it's just very offensive. But I think the more interesting discussion came from D and E, because someone in our group said, this targets a religion, and this is quite contentious right now. And then another person said, but what about race? That's also, something contentious. Why is religion something, that's currently more contentious than race? So there was quite a big discussion on that, but because it was one person, okay. The second question, actually we had majority yes and one no. No for the, I think it was D and C. We didn't actually go into the reason, but for the yeses, even within the yeses, we had quite a lot of differing views. One person had the view that art is meant to provoke, and yes, art is a safe space, and one person said that art is meant to provoke, whereas I had the view that if it's only meant to provoke, then I, for my own personal belief, I would question that, and I'm not sure if, I wouldn't disallow it, but I would question it. And also we talked about ages, so for a younger audience, we might not allow these statements to be said in a performance, but for an older audience, yes, and then even within the group, we had, primary school, secondary school. And finally, also we talked about context being important because we actually discussed this in theatre, but what about in paintings or dance? And someone said that, well, if the context changes the meaning, then they might not allow this expression if it's too offensive. So, yeah.
Round of applause. Thank you very much. Rep from Group 6. Losing count.
Hi, my name is Shochin. I represent Group 6. Would you like to raise your hand to be counted? There we are. Okay, so let me just read out the statements that we have chosen. D, Christians are power-hungry and malicious, but deceive others into thinking they are compassionate and kind. Statement 2, E, religious people are ignorant and delusional. They have absolutely no sound knowledge grounded in reality about their gods. The reasons we chose this was because we thought that it was worded in a very sweeping statement. If you were to put any other group into there, that can be equally offensive as well. So we thought it got, and one of our discussants thought it was quite personally offensive as well. So we had problems with the way it was worded. So we also had problems with the rest of the statements, but of course, I think these two are the ones that came out strongly for us. With regards to would you allow the expression, there were 2 unconditional yeses. The reasons giving that nothing should be off limits because arts needs to be a special space where everyone has the freedom to respond, react, and reflect. There are also checks and balances within the artistic community itself. So when you put something up, there will be a response, and that response itself will be a check and balance. And I think that was reflected earlier by a group. We had, how many of us are 5, right? 3. Okay, so 3 others says it depends. One of the depends is how do you define what is artistic? So what if things are taken out of context? What if something is interpreted as artistic, but it cannot be, it shouldn't be artistic, and that person calls it artistic? There can also be some entity to provide some kind of guidance. Have I chosen the right words for that? Right, Ken? Okay, all right. So then the final reason is that the audience needs to be prepared because there can be some danger to create more discourse. So in some way, they must be prepared to be ready to be offended if they're going to come in for these, to see these statements being put forth in artistic context. So that was very succinct. I would like to give anyone to correct me from my group. Great, thank you.
Thank you. And we have the last rep.
Hi, my name is Leanne, and I'm from Group 7. We are the most freedom-loving bunch, quite libertarian. So the conclusion was, anything goes until it harms somebody. So yeah, C was unanimous because there is incitement to violence. But we are fine with artistic expressions of that. And for the second statement, actually, three of them were undecided, and only one chose D. Christians are power-hungry and malicious, but deceive others into thinking they are compassionate and kind. And I was the one who said F. Every ex-homosexual is proof that people are not born this way. So I chose F, and eventually won them over. I had like swing votes. Because, you know, ex-homosexual. So this statement talks about two groups. Firstly, Christians who went through a phase and then realized that they're not homosexuals, which a Catholic guy talked about some friends who went through that, you know. So that's fine because no one got hurt in the process. But then there is another group that went through conversion therapy against their will, you know, electroshock therapy. That's, you know, I read about that and gay pastors who have a family but still fuck around. And I feel, you know, the hurt in there is unacceptable for me. But surprisingly, okay, so the guy who chose D, it's because he thinks that you single out Christians as power-hungry and malicious, and that's hurtful because you shouldn't just single out. Everyone could be power-hungry and malicious. And also for Camille, he said that in his world map, we can be who we want to be, but once you impose this on somebody, that's not good. So you can be power-hungry and malicious and be happy about it, but don't deceive others and saying, you know, we want to convert you, but actually crusades, like we kill everybody. So that's like what we brought in. As for arts and censorship, there was a very interesting point brought about propaganda art. So, you know, obviously if there isn't sufficient context, like in China, communism, Great Leap Forward thing, or North Korea, where there is no alternative, there is a power imbalance, there is no sufficient context or alternatives to consider, then that's not good because you don't. Yeah, so, but we didn't really talk about like purpose of art and all that. It's more like anything goes as long as no one gets hurt. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much to all our 7 representatives from the groups and to all our discussants for doing the hard work on this. So at this point, we have a very interesting summary actually, which is that on certain things, their public opinion, or at least the opinion of discussants, seems to be rather united. For example, on statement C, I think only one group did not choose statement C as the most contentious statement out of all. And then there appear to be some statements which are kind of like on the borderline, and the groups actually discussed this and had a range of views over why they should be permitted or not permitted. You know, some people expressed disagreement with singling out certain groups in statements for criticism. There was discussion on whether the context of the statements will make a difference, whether there were checks and balances involved in the form of either a public authority or even in the form of market forces that will weed out certain statements that are offensive, right? So it's interesting. I mean, we have a range of views, and also we have certain commonalities that have emerged. Now, I'd like to do a short poll of the discussants. How many of you actually change your minds on this task or on the contention of these statements after the deliberations? Just show of hands. Who changed? Whose views changed? And whose didn't? Okay, so the majority did not change their views. And now, I'd actually like to take a look at whether the audience, through your surveys, whether views have shifted on these issues over the course of this evening. So I'm going to ask Norlina if the results of the 2 surveys that we have taken from you are ready. Norlina, are the surveys ready? Okay. So, all right, so you have all taken surveys at two points. Okay, first when you came in the room and later during the break. Okay, and this, okay. So this looks like the audience's views have actually shifted, right? Norlina, do we know anything about the statistical significance of this? So,
Like immediately?
yes?
No. You can see by the colors, it shifted.
Okay, I'll take your word on it. So it is significant. Okay, some of these shifts are very.
You don't know.
We don't know. Okay, and on the second set, views have shifted too. Some by quite a bit. So, yeah, this is very, very interesting. And note that this was actually before the discussants are presented. Right, so clearly the process of listening to the commentators speak and then having a lively discussion about these issues have actually shifted opinions here tonight. That is very, very interesting. Okay, I'll leave that for you as a personal reflection. Now, going on. Okay, so this is. All right.
The disagree is stronger.
Strongly disagree.
There are lots more disagreement.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay, so we have a leftward skew towards disagree, right? And this question is, if there is a disagreement, so what does this actually tell us? Does it mean that we now have more faith in ourselves to talk through things after we've managed to do so tonight? Okay, final, ethical. Okay. Yeah, too fast. I also need time. Okay. Strong. So this is a rightward skew, is it? So now we have more people agreeing that public dialogue between affected groups and society should be the process to find solutions. So we now have a lot more people shifting their opinions to the right on this, is it? The other way? Before, after. Oh, okay. It's hard to see from this angle, okay. All right, audiences should be allowed to hear challenging statements. So this is more people agree? More people strongly agree? Okay. Shift towards agree. Okay. Okay, not much of a difference before or after. Slight shift to agree.
Basically, they all agree before the deliberation and agree continues.
Okay. Okay, this one doesn't look like there's much change either. Art should be a space. So we all continue to sort of agree very strongly. Okay. Right, so agreement is still very strong on this issue, not much change. Okay. Whoa. Right. Okay, so I get to face you again. Wow. Okay. So on some questions, our views have shifted, and on others, they have not. What does this all mean? I'm still like trying to wrap my head around it physically. But very fortunately for today, we have invited a very distinguished person, Mr. Sasi Duran, to actually wrap up the discussion. Mr. Sasi Duran is a cultural medallion winner, a very, very distinguished thespian and thinker. And he has been observing us throughout this whole evening, right? He has been observing this diverse range of views, and we're now actually going to invite him to wrap up the discussion, to pull everything together and tell us what it all means and how we should go forward from here. So I yield the stage to him and go back to you now for this back.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The fact that you are still here, I suppose, indicates something significant. Because going by the results of the polls, there is nothing significant that this evening seems to have produced. And really, the reason for this is quite simple. The reason for this is that there should be an elephant in the room, but there wasn't from the beginning. The elephant in the room are the people who congenitally, who initially and who fervently would disagree with us. And they were never in the room. And it's important to consider that, because the entire evening was an evening where we were preaching to the converted. And this is what artists should stop doing. Art res publicae. It brings together two fundamental concepts: art and the public good, art as public good. Art is the most radically subjective thing you can conceive of. It is the most personal, it is the most private, it is the most intimate expression that our imaginations would allow. The public space is the open space, which is the common, which belongs to everyone, which no one can own except by the force of power. This is important to understand. The public space is determined and shaped by the dynamic of power, ergo by politics. The private space of art is shaped by the personality of the artist, her conscience, her upbringing, her society, her intelligence, her ideology. And the two will very often never conform to one another. If they do, then there is something wrong with society. This is something the Greeks understood from time immemorial. As Plato said, there should be no place for the artist in the Republic. The artist should be banned, should be banished, should be cast out of the city. The reason is because the artist can make claims which no other person can. And he can make such claims, or she can make such claims, because he or she relies on her own sense of validity and truth. And in civilized societies, through time, we have found space for that speech to happen. This is where the tension is resolved. This is how we must be able to accept that there are special spaces, not, I would suggest, uncommon spaces, but public spaces where the artist can speak freely and without fear, where the artist can speak truly to his peers and not just the converted. The responsibilities of the artist are clear. The responsibility, the highest responsibility of the artist is often to be irresponsible, to speak truth to power, to give voice to the voiceless, to say that which we are afraid to say, to cast out doubt, to believe in the humanity, in the common humanity of all mankind. This is clearly the responsibility of the artist. But the responsibility of keeping open the public space, that is the responsibility of the ruler. It is the responsibility of the governments who are elected or who put themselves in power or who find themselves in power by birth or by some other privilege. It is their responsibility to keep that space open. And that is where there is an imbalance. Because for as much and as long as the artists may rail, for as loud as they may speak, as long as the public spaces are closed, are limited, are confined because of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. As long as FUD pervades the public space, as long as we are afraid, as long as we remain uncertain, and as long as we continue to doubt, those spaces will be closed in the interests of security and public order. But I urge you to look back on history. When has there ever been a revolution that was caused by art? When has art ever disposed a king or a tyrant or a government or even a corporation? It has never happened. Because truly, art can change nothing unless the people can take it to heart. Art can change people. People can change the world. That's the significant equation we need to remember. That's the significant conjunction of what it means to bring art to a public space. If I may, I would like at this stage to cite a poem from Philip Larkin. What do we mean when we say that art is a public good? This question was raised often this evening. What we mean when we say art is a public good is that it is like water or that it is like air. It is something that we cannot live without. It is something that we must have to remain human, to be ourselves, to become better ourselves. And Larkin talks about water, which I think is instructive for artists. I quote, "If I were called in to construct a religion, I should make use of water. Going to church would entail affording to dry different clothes. My liturgy would employ images of scousing, a furious, devout drench. And I should raise in the east a glass of water where any angled light would congregate endlessly. I would raise in the east a glass of water where any angled light would congregate endlessly. And this is the responsibility of the ruler. The ruler has a responsibility to keep public spaces open so that any angled light of sexuality or orientation or religion or color of skin or ideology may congregate endlessly. And if art can help bring that day one day sooner, it would have done its work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sasi, for that very rousing speech on public spaces and the role of the different parties in actually keeping that open. That's a very interesting point because as a last reflection, I actually like to pose everyone this question. Apart from the responsibility of the ruler to keep public spaces open, as is Mr. Sasi's view, what responsibility do citizens actually have also in keeping the public spaces open? So if you notice earlier when we were deliberating, discussing, and there were differences in opinion, how did you respond when you encountered something that was beyond your personal limits? Did you withdraw? Did you get angry? Did you feel confronted? Did you check out, right? And, or did you continue engaging, participating, airing your views and listening respectfully? And between the two, what implications does this have for how safe our spaces actually are as they are in public, okay, and also as created by us, the citizens of this country? Another point I'd like to offer as a reflection, and which Mr. Sasi mentioned, we are here preaching to the converted, right? So everyone in here could afford a ticket to come in. So we're of a certain socio-economic class, right? We're all art goers and we're all here tonight. So what about the voices that do not show up to take part in this discussion? What is our attitude towards them? And how can we create public spaces that can include them? Should we even do that, right? Do they matter? How much do we care about them? Should we even care about them? And also, given how much opinions can change or not change, right, as a result of deliberative discussions, how really should we measure public opinion that is so key when we talk about what society's position should be on various issues today? And should we poll people for public opinion only after we have had deliberative discussions, right? So I'm going to leave all of you with those 3 points for reflection this evening and move on to thanking all the people who have made this groundbreaking forum possible. Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank Keng, SIFA Festival Director. A round of applause for Keng. Right, he's over there, he's hiding there. Who mooted this forum, this very groundbreaking forum, first in SIFA. We should also thank Norlina, Director of O.P.E.N, again hiding backstage, okay, who so niftily and deftly computed the results of your shifts in opinion in our presentation earlier without statistical significance, but that's fine. We also like to thank discussants for all the hard work. Discussants actually had to come to attend 2 workshops before stepping into this space. So that is sheer commitment to deliberative discussion. Round of applause for discussants, please. Round of applause. Yeah. Okay. very model of active citizenry. We'd also like to thank the audience for being very present tonight and participating. So sometimes we don't all get to speak, but even just your presence is enough to make this event. So thank you. Give yourselves a round of applause. We thank the moderator as well for for finding the courage to stand up here in front of 150 people with views and who might sort of like, you know, yell at me if I don't do it properly. We also thank the production team, you know, the people who are doing the lightings, the slides, the Nail Tang, the consultant who actually designed this whole process, and also to NAC, right, for funding this event, National Arts Council. So thank you, NAC. Thank you, everyone. Tomorrow we have, yes? Yes, of course. Thank you to our commentators for coming here and bringing your passion to this event. Wonderful job. I loved all your speeches. I loved them all. And tomorrow we have another forum where it'll be a similar format, and we will be discussing Singapore's future of care in aging. It will be fun, like it was tonight, and there will be food and wine. So please come if you can, all right? And in the meantime, good night and stay safe. Thanks, everyone.